Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Kiran Bendigeri from Grafosyss IAS. In this video, let's have a look at 7th Standard Science 3rd chapter. Fiber to fabric. Wool and silk fibers are obtained from animals. Wool is obtained from the fleece, that is called hair, of sheep or yak. Silk fibers come from cocoons of the silk moth. Right, wool from sheep or yak or any animals which live in cold places, and silk fibers from cocoons. Wool comes from sheep, goat, yak and some other animals. These wool yielding animals bear hair on their body. Hair trap a lot of air. Air is a poor conductor of heat, so hair keeps these animals warm. Wool is derived from these hairy fibers. Derived from these hairy fibers. Right. So this is from sheep, goat, yak and camels, etc. Right. Let us like us, the hairy skin of the sheep has two types of fibers that form its fleece: the coarse beard hair and the fine soft under hair close to the skin. So two type of fibers: the coarse beard hair and the soft under hair close to the skin. The fine hair provide the fibers for making wool. Some breeds of sheep possess only fine under hair. Their parents are specially chosen to give birth to sheep which have only soft under hair. This process of selecting parents for obtaining special characters in their offspring, such as soft under hair in sheep, is termed selective breeding. So remember this, selective breeding. So their parents are selected for obtaining special characters in their offspring, that is, which are having soft under hair. Right. Animals that yield wool. Several breeds of sheep are found in different parts of our country. However, the fleece of sheep is not the only source of wool. Though wool commonly available in the market is sheep wool. Yak wool is common in Tibet and Ladakh. Angora wool is obtained from Angora goats, found in hilly regions such as Jammu and Kashmir. Wool is also obtained from goat hair. The underfur of Kashmiri goat is soft. It is woven into fine shawls called pashmina shawls. We have already read about it in 6th standard, right? So this is pashmina shawl which is from Kashmiri goat, right? The fur of on the body of camels is also used as wool. Llama and alpaca found in South America also yield wool. Right. So let's see at different animals so that we get some idea about these animals. So this is Angora goat, right? And camel, obviously you may be knowing, and there are many variety of camels living in different parts of the world, right? One hump, two humps, and this is the yak. It has a lot of fur. And llama, right? And this is alpaca. From fibers to wool. For obtaining wool, sheep is reared. Their hair is cut and processed into wool. Rearing and breeding of sheep. If you travel to the hills in Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Uttaranchal, Arunachal Pradesh and Sikkim, or the plains of Haryana, Punjab, Rajasthan and Gujarat, you can see shepherds taking their herds of sheep for grazing. Sheep are herbivorous and prefer grass and leaves. Apart from grazing sheep, rearers also feed them on a mixture of pulses, corn, jowar, oil cakes and minerals. Oil cakes are something which are the materials which are left after taking oil from the seeds, right? Groundnut cakes, sort of that. In winter, sheep are kept indoors and fed on leaves, grain and dry fodder. So in majority part of Himalayan region, we can see the rearing of sheep and all, right? And also in plains of Haryana, Punjab, Rajasthan, Gujarat. So these are fed different food items like pulses, corn, jowar, oil cakes and minerals. Sheep are reared in many parts of our country for wool. Table gives the names of some breeds of sheep reared in our country for producing wool. The quality and texture of the fibers obtained from them is also indicated in the table. Certain breeds of sheep have thick coat of hair on their body which yields good quality wool in large quantities. As mentioned earlier, these sheep are selectively bred, with one parent being a sheep of good breed. Once the reared sheep have developed a thick growth of hair, hair is shaved off for getting wool, right? So these are the different breeds. So these try to remember as much possible. So the name of the breed, Lohi. So the quality of wool, it will be good quality wool, and where it is found, Rajasthan, Punjab, in the plain regions. Rampur, bush hair, brown fleece, Uttar Pradesh and Himachal Pradesh. Nali, carpet wool, Rajasthan, Haryana and Punjab. Bakarwal, for woolen shawls, Jammu and Kashmir. Marwadi, coarse wool, in Gujarat. Patanwadi, for Hoseri, Gujarat. Processing fibers into wool. The wool which is used for knitting sweaters or for weaving shawls is the finished product of a long process which involves the following steps. So this is not a simple process, this is a very long process which we are going to study it, right? So what happens in step 1? The fleece of the sheep along with a thin layer of skin is removed from its body. So this process is called shearing. So remember, thin layer of skin is also removed along with the fleece of the sheep, right? This is shearing. Machines similar to those used by barbers are used to shave off hair. Usually hair is removed during the hot weather. This enables sheep to survive without their protective coat of hair. The hair provide woolen fibers. Woolen fibers are then processed to obtain woolen yarn. Fibers, yarn, right? So first fibers are produced and then yarn is produced. So remember this: hair, fibers, yarn. Shearing does not hurt the sheep, just as it does not hurt when you get a haircut or your father shaves his beard. Do you know why? The uppermost layer of the skin is dead. Also the hair of the sheep grow again just as your hair does. So hairs are removed during summer and hair to fiber, fiber to yarn, right? So these are dead ones, so they don't feel pain due to removal of this upper layer of skin. The sheared skin with hair is thoroughly washed in tanks to remove grease, dust and dirt. This is called scouring. Nowadays scouring is done by machines. So after removing hair, it is washed to remove the dirty particles, unwanted particles like grease, dust and dirt. This is scouring, right? After scouring, salting is done. The hairy skin is sent to a factory where hair of different textures are separated or sorted. So we know that different animals have different textures of hairs. So these have to be separated. So these are salted. So this is in third step, right? In the fourth step, the small fluffy fibers called burrs are picked out from the hair. These are the same burrs which sometimes appear on your sweaters. The fibers are scoured again and dried. This is the wool ready to be drawn into fibers, right? So small fluffy things which are called burrs are picked out from the hair, right? Then it is scoured again. Step 5. The fibers can be dyed in various colors, as the natural fleece of sheep and goats is black, brown or white. So these are the common colors: black, brown and white, natural colors. So they have to be dyed, means colors have to be applied. The fibers are straightened, combed and rolled into yarn. The longer fibers are made into wool for sweaters and the shorter fibers are spun and woven into woolen cloth. So longer fibers into wool for sweaters, shorter are spun and woven into woolen cloth. So remember this. So fibers are straightened, combed and rolled, right? So these are the steps, please remember. And let's see in the pictorial representation shearing a sheep. So the hairs are removed here. Scouring in tanks, right? So it is being cleaned of dust particles, grease and all. Scouring by machines, right? Scouring separated and rolling into yarn. So this is rolled into yarn. These are all done using machines. Occupational hazard. Wool industry is an important means of livelihood for many people in our country. But sorter's job is risky, as sometimes they get infected by a bacterium, anthrax, which causes a fatal blood disease called sorter's disease. Such risks faced by workers in any industry are called occupational hazards. So in industry people face occupational hazards. While they are working, they may be affected by some bacteria or some chemicals, or due to some mechanical malfunction of machines. So these are called occupational hazards, right? So in this particular wool industry, they are affected by bacteria or anthrax, sort of that. So these are actually a fatal blood disease, and this is also called as sorter's disease, right? Life history of silk moth. So until now we read about wool. Now we are reading about silk. Life history of silk moth. The female silk moth lays eggs, from which hatch larvae which are called caterpillars or silkworms. They grow in size, and when the caterpillar is ready to enter the next stage of its life history called pupa, it first weaves a net to hold itself. Then it swings its head from side to side in the form of the figure of 8. During these movements of the head, the caterpillar secretes fiber made of a protein which hardens on exposure to air and becomes silk fiber. Soon the caterpillar completely covers itself by silk fibers and turns into pupa. This covering is known as cocoon. The further development of the pupa into moth continues inside the cocoon. Silk fibers are used for weaving silk cloth. Can you imagine that the soft silk yarn is as strong as comparable thread of steel? So this is the process. So what happens is, first female silk moth, it lays eggs first, from which larvae, which are called caterpillars or silkworms. Caterpillar grows and enter into next stage, pupa. There it weaves a net. So next they secretes fiber made of protein, and when it is exposed to air it will become silk fiber. So caterpillar completely covers itself by silk fibers, right, and it turns into pupa. So the covering which we have seen in an earlier chapter, the cocoon, so the covering is known as cocoon. So these are cocoons, right? So these are cocoons. So the further development of pupa into moth continues inside the cocoon. So remember, caterpillar to pupa, pupa to moth. So during this process they release their fibers that will become silk fiber. The silk yarn is obtained from the cocoon of the silk moth. There is a variety of silk moths which look very different from one another, and the silk yarn they yield is different in texture, coarse, smooth, shiny, etc. Thus tussar silk, muga silk, kosa silk, etc. are obtained from cocoons spun by different types of moths. So different type of moths produces different kinds of silk. The most common silk moth is the mulberry silk moth. The silk fiber from the cocoon of this moth is soft, lustrous and elastic, and can be dyed in beautiful colors. So we have to remember these different silks: tussar silk, muga silk, kosa silk, right? And mulberry silk is one of the most common silk we can find in market. Silk fibers are also animal fibers. Silkworms spin the silk fibers. The rearing of silkworms for obtaining silk is called sericulture. Silkworms, sericulture. Rearing of silkworms, right? Sericulture or culture of silkworms is a very old occupation in India. India produces plenty of silk on a commercial scale. So first silk is produced in China. We have learnt about in history subject, right? In India, women are significantly involved in various kinds of industries related to silk production. These are rearing of silkworms, reeling of silk from cocoons, and processing of raw silk into fabrics. By their enterprise, they contribute to the nation's economy. China leads the world in silk production. India also ranks among the leading silk producing countries. This is how silk is produced, and India is one of the top leading producer of silk, and China is at the top. From cocoon to silk. For obtaining silk, moths are reared and their cocoons are collected to get silk threads. So cocoons are collected to get silk threads, right? Rearing silkworms. A female silk moth lays hundreds of eggs at a time. The eggs are stored carefully on strips of cloth or paper and sold it to silkworm farmers. So this is the first process. The eggs are stored carefully on strips of cloth. So there will be board like structure on which it will be carefully placed and sold to farmers. The farmers keep eggs under hygienic conditions and under suitable conditions of temperature and humidity. So there are specific conditions. Only under that conditions we have to keep those eggs, otherwise it will get destroyed. The eggs are warmed to a suitable temperature for the larva to hatch from eggs. This is done when mulberry trees bear a fresh crop of leaves. The larvae, called caterpillars or silkworms, eat day and night and increase enormously in size. So these caterpillars eat mulberry tree leaves, right? And that is their food. Female silkworm moth with eggs. Leaf of mulberry tree, larva feeding on mulberry leaves. So from eggs we get larva that feed on mulberry leaves. Rearing silkworms, cocoons. Discovery of silk. The exact time of discovery of silk is perhaps unknown. According to an old Chinese legend, the Empress Si Lung-chi was asked by the Emperor Huang-ti to find the cause of the damaged leaves of mulberry trees growing in their garden. The Empress found white worms eating up mulberry leaves. She also noticed that they were spinning shiny cocoons around them. Accidentally, a cocoon dropped into her cup of tea, and a tangle of delicate threads separated from the cocoon. Silk industry began in China and was kept a closely guarded secret for hundreds of years. Later on, traders and travelers introduced silk to other countries. The route they traveled is still called the Silk Route. So this is the story of the silk. So there was an empress named Si Lung-chi. She was asked by Emperor Huang-ti about the damaging leaves of mulberry trees. These mulberry tree leaves are used even now for feeding larvae of this silk, right? Silkworm. And one day accidentally the cocoon dropped into her tea, and she saw the delicate threads and all, and later they separated it from the cocoon, and from there the silk industry began in China. And it was introduced to other countries also, and the route through which they traveled is called Silk Route. The larvae are kept in clean bamboo trays along with freshly chopped mulberry leaves. After 25 to 30 days, the caterpillars stop eating and move to a tiny chamber of bamboo in the tray to spin cocoons. Small racks or twigs may be provided in the trays to which cocoon get attached. The caterpillar or silkworm spins the cocoon, inside which develops the silk moth. So it is placed on the bamboo trays and left it for 25 to 30 days until they will keep eating mulberry leaves, and later they move to tiny chamber of bamboo, and there they will spin the cocoons. Processing silk. A pile of cocoons is used for obtaining silk fibers. The cocoons are kept under the sun or boiled or exposed to steam. The silk fibers separate out. The process of taking out threads from the cocoon for use as silk is called reeling the silk. Reeling is done in special machines which unwind the threads or fibers of silk from the cocoon. Silk fibers are then spun into silk threads, which are woven into silk cloth by weavers. So we can see the cocoons are used for obtaining silk fibers. So what happens? They will either boil, or they will expose it to steam, or they will keep under sun. Then the silk fibers separate out, and the process of taking out threads from the cocoon for use as silk is called reeling, right? So remember, reeling, taking out threads, right? It is done using special machines which unwind the threads or fibers of silk, and later the fibers are spun into threads, and threads are used to weave the cloth. So remember all these things: cocoon, fleece, reeling, scoring, sericulture, shearing, silk moth, silkworm, salting. What you have learnt: silk comes from silkworms and wool is obtained from sheep, goat, and yak. Hence silk and wool are animal fibers. The hairs of camel, llama, alpaca are also processed to yield wool. In India, mostly sheep are reared for getting wool. Sheep hair is sheared off from the body, scored, salted, dried, dyed, spun and woven to yield wool. So we saw all this process, right? Silkworms are caterpillars of silk moth. During their life cycle, the worms spin cocoons of silk fibers. Silk fibers are made of a protein. Silk fibers from cocoons are separated out and reeled into silk threads. Weavers weave silk threads into silk cloth. So this is the end of the chapter. Thank you.